in your dark days is when you learn the most that you then apply in your days of prosperity. But a lot of us, we don't want to remember those dark days. We want to forget that because it's so painful. But that's when you gain the most. That's when you get your intestinal fortitude and you really understand the depth of your own character.
You're listening to Idea Charger Radio. Good morning and welcome back, Success Chargers. It's Scott here with another episode. This is episode 11. I'm really excited that you've come back once again. Thank you so much. The crowd goes wild. Hey, listen, we've got some great stuff coming for you today. Finally, after a couple of weeks of leading up my promises to you, we've got the interview. We've got the interview with Jimmy Monk, my friend who is a Pennsylvania State Trooper, speaker, trainer, all-around fantastic guy. You're going to have a great time listening to this interview today. It's a conversation about resilience and vulnerability and empathy, and we're just going to tackle a whole number of issues. And I'll tell you, I was really excited because we had reconnected when Jimmy called me up and asked to buy some additional copies of a book project that I did back in about 2006 or 7 called Powerful People Overcome Powerful Failures. And we talk a little bit about why he enjoyed the title when he got his copy of the book just a couple of years ago, how he shares that with people and kind of what he's doing with it. I'm going to let him tell you about it. I was thrilled to know that it really resonated with him, and it seems to be connecting with his audiences as well. So we'll let him talk about it, and then I'll let you know if you have an interest of where you might get a copy of that. That we'll add a link to that in the show notes. How's that? You can have that, or you can always check us out at ideacharger.com. We'll get a link up so you know where you can pick up a copy for yourself. Would love to get one in your hands. I've just been really blown away by the feedback I continue to get about the show. We did a survey just last week, and a great number of you not only answered our call to provide some input, but you must have shared it with people that you know, because we got a great number of responses back. And you'll be watching, we're going to be sharing some of that information that really lets us know what you look for in a podcast, what you'd like out of this one. And I think you're going to see that it will shape some of the topics that are to come. So for those of you that took a few minutes to participate, thank you so much for that. You're going to see the show become even more of what you like. Of course, as always, send us your emails, questions, feedback, thoughts, rants, whatever you got, send it to us, podcast@ideacharger.com. We'd love to hear what you like or don't like about the show. Who knows? You can probably influence where it's going if you'll just let us hear from you. Hey, just this week, I had the chance to sit down with another good friend of mine, fellow speaker and podcaster, Craig Price. He interviewed me for his show, Reality Check Podcast. You can find out more at realitycheckpodcast.com, or you can find him on iTunes. And I'll put a link to the episode because we sat down and interviewed each other. So you're going to see an interview coming up from Craig here in the next couple of weeks. But you can also find, if you're listening to this episode, that means that his interview with me has gone live, because it's going live on early morning on October the 20th of 2015. So as this comes out, I highly encourage you, as soon as you get done listening to the show today, please go over and visit Craig's show, realitycheckpodcast.com. and download and listen to the episode, because he gets a chance to interview me, and you'll get to hear a little bit more of kind of what I'm about. But you'll also get exposed to another friend of mine who's a great podcaster, great interviewer. Hey, go around and explore. He's interviewed a great number of really cool people. It's a really diverse podcast, covers a lot of topics. Go check it out. I'm sure you'll find some stuff that you like, and download that. As we get ready to go to the interview, there may be a couple of references that you hear in the show to some things that you might see. And that's because when we did the interview, we were using the new platform blab.im. If you haven't been out there, it's sort of like Twitter and a webinar and Google Hangouts all got together and had a love child. It's kind of interesting. It's actually proven to be a good technology to use for the shows that we've got. You can actually poke around and see the behind the scenes entire raw feed of unedited discussion that I had with Jimmy Monk. And if you want, you can just go out to blab.im, do a search for Jimmy Monk, or look for Idea Charger Podcast, and you should be able to find us out there. So you can check that out if you like. But if you hear some weird references to something that we talk about, you can see on the screen, something like that, please know that I actually was looking at Jimmy and he was looking at me, but we were not in the same room. He was in Pennsylvania. I was here in the Idea Charger studios in the Woodlands, Texas, as we did that interview. So just wanted to give you that point of view. But hey, sit back and enjoy. Here's my good friend, Jimmy Monk. Jimmy, let's just jump right to it. For over 2 decades, you've been a trooper in the great state of Pennsylvania. And,
that is correct.
Yeah, and you live up in the Pittsburgh area. So tell us a little bit about, you also do speaking and training. You're a trooper. You're a busy guy. Tell us how these worlds collided.
Well, I had an opportunity to become a full-time trainer for my department back in 2006. And I realized right away that I was providing a valuable service, and that inspired me to apply a lot of my life experiences. And then I went on from there. So I went back to work as a full-time trooper doing other things. I left the training realm for my department, but then I continued with my professional training and my public speaking career.
Excellent. I think since we spoke last, I went back out and revisited your website. Hadn't looked at it for a while. Love the new the logo with the monk.
Thank you.
Very cool. Very cool. I would encourage people. We are at jimmymonk.com.
That is correct.
All right. I just want to make sure I got that one right. I don't want to send them to some other website, that has a clever thing and somebody's using your picture if that's not your website. Let's put it that way.
I hope they have a good view of me if they're using my website.
Well, it was somewhat favorable, a little questionable, but we'll leave it at that. You didn't have on like your trooper hat or uniform. It's all business there on the front. You're putting out there.
Absolutely. My main goal is to try and serve people, saving them time, money, resources, energy. Back to the reason we're here today. We're here for people's success and to share what knowledge and information we have.
So tell us, when you're working with groups, when you go in and someone has you in as a speaker, has you in to conduct a workshop, how do you work your magic?
So when I talk to people and work my magic, as you say, and I hear their frustrations or their problems, that's what really charges me up and gets me excited about sharing my experiences. So I guess to put it down to a sentence or two, I hear their problems, then I can really start to apply my knowledge and experience.
Okay. Can you give our listeners an example of a group or a company, someone that brought you in that you could sort of describe what was going on, what their challenges were, and how you were able to listen and hear what they were about, really connect with them and help them solve that problem?
Absolutely. Some of the groups, any church group, civic group, student activities, offices for colleges and universities, many police groups, law enforcement agencies, corrections, any government entities, any nonprofits that are trying to make sense of the current headlines today, how to interact with the police, use of force things. So my background is policing, but my real background is people and problems, which is obviously very prevalent in our society. So anything from negotiations and effective communication to basically, hey, what is the law and how does this apply and how am I supposed to respond?
There's been a lot of talk recently. I know just before we recorded this, and I'm sure it's been on national news, but there was about 2 weeks ago here in the Houston area, there was a sheriff's deputy that was filling up his patrol car at a gas station and got gunned down. It was absolutely horrific. And the city has really responded in a very positive way in support of what law enforcement professionals like yourself, what you're up against. I mean, you're trying to help make the world a better place, to be, a safe place so that we can go out and enjoy the freedoms that we have. But you guys have a tough job. And I like that when you take the uniform off, you still have authentically Jimmy Monk that says, let's talk about how we can bridge the gap between law enforcement and the civilian community. And really, we're all living in the same world. Is that a fair sort of roundabout way of what you try to do?
I have to say, I'm going to respond and put this back to giving a plug to you just because it's well-deserved, and talk to you about your book, Powerful People Overcome Powerful Failures. Mm-hmm. We live in a society where, everything's instant news, and when people make mistakes, they become throwaway people, unfortunately, in our culture, in the news media. And in reality, people that make mistakes are not only salvageable, but a lot of them know a lot of things, and because of the experiences they've gone through. So when you talk about me and my efforts to bridge the gap, I also draw a lot of information and power from your book because I know it reaches a lot of people.
Man, I appreciate that. Powerful People Overcome Powerful Failures. That's a project from, it's going on 8-9 years ago. You got introduced to it just a couple of years ago when I came up to Pittsburgh.
Correct.
And you saw it there. And I was so excited when I heard from you saying, hey, can I get some more copies of the book? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm really curious to find out how you're using it, why you're doing what you're using it for. What is one of the standout quotes? It's a book that's really kind of a journal that we put together so that every day for 6 months you get a quote you haven't read before, and you get some questions that challenge you to reframe failures in terms of success. So that's resonated with you. Absolutely.
I've referred to this book many times. I'm a pretty well-read guy, as I think anybody that's interested in success is. Mm-hmm. But this is a very powerful resource, especially as a journal. It's awesome for a lot of broken people. And there's a lot of those people out there, myself included, you included. None of us always ride the highs of the tidal wave. It's an up and down. And in those dips is when we learn the most. And there's a lot of wonderful resource information in your book.
I appreciate that. That book for me was therapy. When I wrote that, I was myself at the time coming off some big challenges, some life-changing events that really mm-hmm. shaped who I am, but have put me back on a path. And I wasn't in danger of going to jail, or I didn't need to go to a 12-step program. I wasn't spinning out of control, but I could see very easily how somebody that had a few of the setbacks that I'd had a marriage that failed. I had a business that I couldn't get all of the traction that I was looking for because I was distracted by everything else going on in my life. Relationships were falling apart. I was unhappy. Spiritually, I wasn't very well centered. I was just trying to get by, and I was kind of living through. As I look back, I refer to it as my dark days. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine in your line of work, you run into people that they're just trying to survive, and they're feeling that darkness. They're feeling that they've lost hope, many of them, and they've been told. I think that's what resonated with me. We had our exchange earlier this week. They've been told that they don't have a worth. And these are people that... That's exactly
right. I was just going to add, you right before that, you said about lost hope. And that's the power of your book, is it is a resource guide. And when you said going through dark days, another part of that, a part that everybody skips over, is in your dark days is when you learn the most that you then apply in your days of prosperity. But a lot of us, we don't want to remember those dark days. We want to forget that because it's so painful. But that's when you gain the most. That's when you get your intestinal fortitude and you really understand the depth of your own character. So it's about applying that to me. And for my profession, absolutely. You have a front row seat in some moral decline, and you have an opportunity to do a lot of great things with people that are otherwise told, hey, you don't count anymore.
We don't have to go far back, unfortunately, just in the news. And we see some things that continue to happen in churches all around the U.S. and around the world. What kind of work, if you're going in and you're talking with a church group, I mean, here's a group of people, we'll presume these are, Christian churches that, we'll talk a lot about, and I'm a man of faith.
Mm-hmm. So am I.
Yep, I know you are. And, in that walk of faith, a lot of times what we're asked to do is have conversations with people that other folks look past, right? They see them
Correct.
for what's happened, despite the fact that our faith teaches us that we ought to forgive those folks. We ought to introduce those people to hope and give them a shot. And when you go in and talk to churches, do you tend to talk more about a security aspect? Do you talk about how to work with those people, but be aware of what's going on in their worlds? Or where do those conversations tend to go when you work with those groups?
A lot of people want to talk about security. It's very prevalent, obviously, because of what's going on in the news. What I want to talk about usually is success and what that means to them and greatness. And that comes from where are they at and where are they trying to go? Because if you're asking me specifically about church groups, but you can take any person or any group and you will find that there's always frustrations that they have. And they all do the same thing, myself included. You try the same methods, you get the same results, and you say, hey, why isn't this working? For people of faith, they say, hey, I've been praying on this, and it's not working. But they're trying the same things. So a lot of what I do is I have a keen ear, and I'm blessed for that, to pick up on some of those things and to give them some insight, to say things like, hey, you can't continue down the same path and expect a different result. It's just not going to happen. So by giving them an opportunity to hear from an outside party, usually I'm very well received and can't always guarantee results for people to make change, but they definitely know some strategies and tactics to apply.
You're so right. Oftentimes you'll look at any situation, and I see it. I work a lot with business groups. And when I go in and we're talking about leadership and success from a business perspective, if you look at, say, a sales organization, what tends to happen is people will say, well, look at Jimmy. Jimmy did something really great, had some great sales results. And so, Jimmy, let's figure out what you did. And somebody will come meet with you and write down, here's Jimmy's 10 steps to get from point A to point B. And this is how he found success. And then we round up all the salespeople and we go, this was Jimmy's formula. Go do this and you'll be successful. And people don't do it, or it doesn't work, because the piece that's missing is what you alluded to earlier. But how do you personally connect with other people? How do you adapt to the situation to meet people where they are and not get so prescriptive in the 10 steps you go through, which are important, but we leave that emotional piece out. And what I hear you saying is people come to you saying, I want a practical solution. And your response is often, I'll give you that, but let's talk about the emotional side of what's happening too.
Correct. And it's very personal. So if you imagine, say, like a big stump in your backyard that you wanted removed, and you didn't have the money to have some company dig it up, and every day you had to go and chop at it or dig at it, that's really what success boils down to. You have to clarify what you want first, and that's a big step that a lot of people miss. And so it takes a conversation with people or organizations to say, hey, where are you at and where are you trying to go? And is this truly where you're trying to go? You could liken it to the generalities of a lot of people say, if I only could hit the Powerball, the Mega Millions.
Right.
It'd be nice to have a new set of problems like that, but it doesn't guarantee your success.
I love the way you frame that. You just trade one set of problems for another, right?
Absolutely.
You're like, I always wondered who I was related to. Go win the jackpot. People that you haven't seen for, a million years, they'll all show, I haven't seen you since you were this big. They'll all show up at your doorstep with their hand out, wanting a piece of the action.
Absolutely. So in trying to assist any organization, a business organization, a civic group, a church group, it's personal. And unfortunately, in our culture, a lot of things are outcome based. Like they say, hey, we want this and we think you could give it to us. but in reality, you're the conduit. So it boils down to how you are as a person. Like, I know you personally in my dealings with you, and I know that you're sincere in your desire to help people. Mm-hmm. That's why you have the Success Podcast, and you're going to continue to grow and expand that because you're genuine in your desire to serve other people. But there is no cookie cutter formula, and that's basically what we're saying. If somebody sells you that bill of goods, okay, sounds nice, but that's not really how things work.
It would be nice. And it seems like everybody's looking for the magic beans, right? The silver bullet, there's just the one thing. If you could just do, no, it's never that easy. We all promise it. And you're right. We're in a world of instant gratification that, here's the 4 things, the 3 things, the one thing. If you'll just buy this product for 4 easy installments of $14.95, we'll solve all of your problems. It's not that simple.
And that's why name recognition, brand recognition matters. Like the name Scott Cooksey means that you're going to be dealing with a quality individual. The name Jimmy Monk means that you're going to be dealing with a quality individual that's actually trying to serve you. It'd be nice, I guess, if you made tons of money and just gave people the magic beans. But at the end of the day, that beanstalk isn't going to grow for a lot of people. So I would rather
to grow those beans.
Absolutely. I would rather be sincere and have people say, "Hey, that was a powerful presentation, and you did a lot for our organization, or you did a lot for me personally on an individual basis." That's credibility is basically what we're talking about.
What's interesting too, Jimmy, is it reminds me that so often when you're in the line of work like you are, right? Be it the law enforcement side or the speaking side of your business, either one, as you're out there in the world, you don't always know the impact that you make on people with whom you come in contact with. Have you ever had a situation where you didn't know if you connected with someone, you didn't know if you ever resonated with them, and then somewhere out of the blue, down the road, that person somehow comes back into your life and lets you know that that's happened somewhere?
Absolutely. I've had that happen on extreme cases, good and bad, but more good, where I've had people approach me in the law enforcement side and say, "Hey, you arrested me a couple years ago and you changed my life around." And I breathe a sigh of relief, like, wow, I didn't recognize this person. I'm glad they meant me no harm. But then I'm very grateful for that, and I listen to their story. And then in the training speaking realm, I've had a lot of people say, "Hey, Jimmy Monk, man, really good to see you. I saw you speak and I saw you present, and I really enjoyed what you said, and I got a lot out of it." I've had a lot of people say, "Hey, I read your book and it saved me a lot of time and energy." So I love to hear that as well.
Negotiation is a big part of the job in law enforcement, because you're often catching somebody in a situation that they would prefer not to be in. They may have been circumstance that, let me back this up. We're only a couple of years removed, maybe a year or so removed from the conclusion of the TV show Breaking Bad. I don't know if you were a fan of the show, if you watched it.
I did.
And, you look at a guy that is in a tough situation, wanting to help take care of his family, and somehow in this weird, twisted way justifies what he's doing for the greater good. He says that, the ends justify the means. And he's like, if I can just get this money, so if I die, my family will be taken care of, my kids can go to college. And the whole thing spins out of control. I'm guessing you've seen that play out many times over in your law enforcement work.
Absolutely. And to tie that into negotiations, there's a couple different things going on there, especially when you just focus on law enforcement. It comes back to your ability to connect with people. So the more life experience you have, the better you are at connecting with people, basically interviewing people and getting them to acknowledge their criminal conduct. That's the first thing. And that's in contrast to television, of course. In other words, they make it look glamorous when you're really watching people's lives fall apart. So to handle that with dignity and respect is very important. And the second part of that is, like we said earlier in the conversation, while you're watching them be held accountable and them decline, you're also giving them an opportunity to start over. Like Breaking Bad was an awesome series. In reality, and that does happen in real life, a lot of people are dying, and his marriage fell apart, his relationship with his child. A lot of people were murdered in that show, but we have it glamorous. And in reality, that's what's happening in our culture every day. So it's basically, to apply it to success, people are getting a lot of bad information out there, and they're accepting it because of the way it's packaged. And we're talking about true success and meaningful lives and happiness. So we have a better message, you and I.
I love this. And I'm sorry that my questions keep going back to law enforcement. I just have so many of them. And it's so big a part of who you are. But I mean, in full disclosure, when I came to Pittsburgh a couple of years ago to come speak to an organization, Jimmy did pick me up. And was my chauffeur, if you will. But no, I was not in the back of his patrol car. I was not. You actually picked me up in your personal vehicle, and you let me sit up front. So
correct. You were not in custody.
I was not in custody. There were no handcuffs involved, and I went peacefully. And there wasn't even a perp walk, really, when I got to the venue.
No confession to any crimes either.
No confessions. It's like when you go in for an interview, it's like, have you ever been convicted of a crime? You're like, convicted? What kind of impact? We live in a world of, you mentioned it earlier, instant gratification. People, good, bad, and ugly, are getting feedback, getting responses, getting attention. Just this past week, I heard a disturbing story of a guy that I actually went to junior high with, that the FBI eventually picked him up because he had faked his own kidnapping, staged it. He was trying to get the attention of his ex-wife who lived out of state. And then they finally arrested him after he attempted to blow her house up. And it sparked a discussion amongst people that had known him growing up. Those of us online that were like, we remembered him as a kid. It was easy for him to be bullied. It was easy. Mm-hmm. He was a guy that cried pretty easy. And then I learned through the course of the discussion that was happening online as it unfolded that apparently he may have been, and I don't know this, but there was someone else that recalled some things that happened even as early as elementary school that would have suggested that he may have been dealing with maybe some abuse or something happened somewhere else in his life. And, to see how that all manifests and comes out, here's a guy though that uses social media to try to get the attention of somebody. He's screaming for attention. He needs help. Mm-hmm. He needs compassion. He needs that forgiveness. He needs, so much. And that's a difficult thing to give today. How do you see social media influencing maybe some patterns and observations that you've already had professionally for some time about where we are in American culture today?
Well, my opinion on those things is what an awesome tool and an awesome opportunity to make the world smaller and to learn from each other. But the flip side of that, and especially from a law enforcement perspective, is that there is no boundaries at all. So, you look at right to free speech, and that's an awesome thing. But what you just talked about, that horrific crime being posted on social media, there is no guidelines and boundaries. I don't know how you address that. Again, to a degree, we're watching a lot of moral decline, and it comes back to being a responsible citizen, being a responsible adult. You mentioned briefly that we're both people of faith, and that's something that we live out and don't necessarily preach to people. In other words, they see how we conduct ourselves, far from perfect, but we're trying to live a good, decent, honorable life. And in law enforcement, that's what we're watching. We're watching a lot of people that don't have good family support or that have fallen through the cracks, and they're using social media and other outlets to basically break down a lot of what's been built up for the last 200 plus years. So very challenging times, and makes our work all that more valuable.
What's the most frightening situations that you have found yourself in throughout the course of your career?
Well, in law enforcement, you become very callous to a degree to survive. So I've seen people die and many horrific things that definitely stay with you. But I have to say, when we're talking about frightening, it's usually personally involved, like getting into that physical altercation where I end up on the bottom and I'm losing. And I don't think that anybody's coming to save me at that moment. Those are the most frightening. Pursuing somebody at a high speed and losing the back end of the vehicle. I had that happen to me one time at 136 miles an hour.
Oh,
and
yeah,
that was a scary, scary feeling. But when you're just talking about bad things, there's an awful lot that every profession has unique things, but you are seeing a lot of terrible sights that stay with you.
What's been the most
humble? Keep you humble, though.
Yeah. For so many of the people listening to this interview, you're hearing this on the podcast. I think most people may hear it there, but I would add too that what you can't see is the smile that's been on Jimmy's face the whole time he's talking to me here. And my experience, Jimmy, in knowing you is I can't see you without a smile on your face. And that I think is a tremendous testament to, where you are personally, how you know that you are a centered person. You've got, you understand the true intent behind your work. And what you do, however it shows up, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's working with organizations, speaking to groups, reaching out to folks, that absolutely comes from your heart. It absolutely comes from, who you are as a man. And I think that's commendable. I think we need more people that work with great intent. There's no angle here other than it's okay. I'm here to help. I'm here to make it better. And you certainly put that off. What's one of the most rewarding situations or things that has happened to you career-wise?
Being appreciated for the things that you've done, like when I said earlier about people that have thanked me. Some of the instances that I've dealt with have been really terrible. I had a homicide in 2003, and we arrested two guys responsible for it in 2012. And the deceased person's daughter thanked me repeatedly. So I would instantly look at that one. I had another one similar to that where the sister of the deceased person was very grateful and said that it was closure for her, that she couldn't move on with her personal life for all those years. And that was from 2001 till 2013 on that second one. So many examples like that. And those are obviously terrible things that people don't necessarily recover from, but they grow out of.
You get to see people at their most vulnerable, at their most raw moments, right? In many situations. And you mentioned that there's a callousness that's just a mechanism, I guess, to be able to cope with what's there. I would think that your faith would play a big role in that, because you've got to just let those things go and recognize that so much of what happens is outside of your control. What you can control, though, is how you influence and contribute to what's going on in a positive way.
You're right. And if we applied that to success, you mentioned the word vulnerable. When people are vulnerable, mm-hmm. they are also very eager and ready to listen and learn. And in our culture, most people aren't listening and learning. So that's a good thing. It means that in law enforcement, we're supposed to handle those people with care. Mm-hmm. But it's you don't want to say a great time, because it's not a great time, but it's a time where they are absolutely locked onto you. They need help. And so in the success realm, when I find an audience, a group, or an individual that I could actually help that's willing to listen, that's when, I feel awesome. When you know that you truly served a group or a person and they actually get it. Like they're listening to you and you're listening to them, and then they're actively participating and applying the information you're sharing. Those are my favorite kind of people to deal with because everybody's a winner.
What role does empathy play in your world?
Huge, enormous. We're talking real, and I've been reluctant to get super in depth, but I had a case one time, and I unfortunately have many cases like this, but I had a case one time where a guy had sexually abused a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And talking to him, he was justifying. And his exact phrase was, he said, "Hey, I'm trying to educate them, to help them for later in life." Well, that's not anything I can empathize with. But he was a 21-year-old guy. He was shy and wasn't comfortable in dealing with women. And so he got involved in internet porn. And somehow he, in his own mind, justified what he was doing to these kids so that he could play out his sexual desires. I empathized with his current situation. And I recognize, and that's very hard for people to say. Like what he was saying to me was extremely egregious. What he did was very egregious.
Absolutely.
A lot of people's position on that is, hey, he doesn't deserve to live. He did potentially ruin 2 lives. That will be a choice that they make years later. But he also can inspire them to go on to help other people, which often happens. So, this is an extreme example, and I only give it to say we don't know where people will end up. I don't know what he went on to do with his life in prison. All I know is that in good conscience and good faith, not only did I do my very best to convict him, and I did, but I also served him and the victim's family well by being professional and staying in my lane, if you will, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I think this to me is where, people, like you said, there's a romantic idea of what law enforcement is based on what we see in television and movies. And
absolutely.
It's very sensational. We think every case is wrapped up within 47 minutes of television plus commercial breaks. We think that every car chase ends with the right people crashing at the end. We think that, the bad guy always gets what's coming to him. That's not always the case, right? And
absolutely,
to use the extreme example that you just shared with us, which, as the parent of a young girl is just horrific to think about, right? That it's just, as a parent, it goes to the core of your soul, right? It just breaks your heart for those people involved. And what I heard you say though is, in a moment where so many people would be quick to judge, you recognized the responsibility that you had to everyone involved in that situation, the perpetrator, the victims, and others that may potentially have been affected by that, as well as to society as a whole, right? That's a big responsibility. When you wear the badge, it's a big responsibility. But in that moment, you recognize that empathy, and I want to remind our listeners, that's not condoning the behavior.
Correct.
That's not saying you agree with them. It's saying that you recognize and acknowledge their emotion and their point of view of how they got where they were, because you're trying to you have to establish a connection with them for them to open up and explain what happened from their perspective, the way they saw it. That's
exactly right. And to broaden that and to relate it to success and to incorporate everything we're talking about, because everything's relevant, we're planting seeds. I planted the seed with him that, hey, what you did was wrong, completely unacceptable. This is the line, and you absolutely crossed it. I also acknowledge that what's done is done. In other words, my anger, hatred, or anything like that towards him does not fix the problem for anyone. So the penance that I did to be successful as a law enforcement investigator, as a detective, as somebody to complete those cases, was done years ago in my dark days and my mistakes, where I learned that, hey, I'm far from perfect. And so, again, not to condone the behavior, but to acknowledge that this guy was on the wrong path. He needs to be held accountable. But all I can do is do my best and be professional with him.
What's so amazing is really there's two other factors that go with that. Number one, you tell the story, you recognize that you have to be empathetic to that person to understand where they're coming from. Otherwise, they'll never let their guard down enough to tell you what really happened. And in doing that, again, you have to be respectful of boundaries, and this includes those to yourself, but that may require you at times to be a bit vulnerable yourself to build that trust, right?
Exactly. I like to use vulnerable is a great word. I like to use the word genuine, especially when we're relating it to both of our professional paths. So if you see me today and you see me next month, people change, things happen, but my value system is the same and I'm the same person. And my vulnerability or my genuineness in sharing with audiences is going to be the same. And that's what makes me relevant. That's what makes you relevant. And that's what makes my knowledge base applicable.
See, what I'm hearing is exactly what your message can do. People want to hear those stories that sound like they're ripped from the headlines, that are things that happen. You know, there's a sensationalism and a sexiness, right, to that law enforcement position. And what you've just done is you've reminded us, you said, look, here's a serious case of somebody who had some egregious offenses. And I was still able to demonstrate empathy. I was a little bit vulnerable myself just to get that fella to open up, to finally give you the example. You know, yes, there was consequences to be paid. But if you can do it in a situation like that, under the circumstances as horrific as they were, think about how that message could be received by a corporate audience, by a group of people that said, look, can't you, if you, Jimmy Monk, a man of good stature, a guy with a smile on his face, if you can be the guy who can look up someone who's made some very poor choices in the eye and say, look, I don't agree with what you did. What you did was wrong. I can see how you got there. Here's my concern. Here's where we are. It doesn't change the gravity of the situation.
Correct.
It doesn't mean that you forget about what they've done and that there's no consequences for them. It just means that you're willing to have that conversation. And I think that is where you build the bridge to your audiences. When people can look at that situation and go, gosh, you know, we look so much at how much we admire those folks like yourself that literally put your lives on the line to go out and do the job to help make the world safer for me and, you know, maintain order in the world to the best of your ability. And you come across some unsavory characters. And if you can do all of that and still exhibit particularly empathy, and you know, you can be a bit vulnerable yourself, I think that says a lot, and I think it opens things up for a lot of people. We're getting close to the end of the time that we've got, but I've got a few questions left in what I call the lightning round. So I'm going to throw this at you pretty quick, and just looking for some really quick answers. You know, something that would jump out. We're going to have some that kind of broad brushed, one that's kind of fun, and then one that's maybe a little more serious. So
Sounds
we'll
good.
Go with that. All right, here we go. Tell me what this means to you. What does the word connection mean to you?
It means personal relationship. That's what I would say it means. When we talk connection, to me, it means making a personal connection, a relationship with that person, conversation, or in whatever exchange you have.
Excellent. What does happiness mean to you?
Being at peace with yourself, I would say for sure.
All right. And what does the word success mean to you?
Success means to me never the same thing. It means success at what I'm working on, success in my career path, success in my life goals, success in my financial goals. So I break it down a little bit more specific, but it means that I'm clear on what I want and I'm working towards that end.
Awesome. All right. So here's a fun question. You're stranded on this island, like in the middle of the ocean. You're going to be there by yourself for the rest of your life. But miraculously, through modern technology, you are left with some sort of a music player and only the content of one album that you can have with you for the rest of your life. What is your one album that hangs out with you on that island?
I think I got to go with like Eagles' greatest hits and make sure I have Take It Easy playing at some point.
I love it.
If I find that somebody dropped me off and then they get lion eyes from the Eagles.
That's awesome. It would make a pretty appropriate soundtrack for reflection upon our lives, wouldn't it?
I think it would. It would.
Definitely could. You can remember what it was like when you stood on that corner in Winslow, Arizona. Anyway, so.
Absolutely.
All right, one last question before we go today. Jimmy Monk, what would you tell 30-year-old Jimmy Monk knowing what you know today?
Time's a wasting. Get focused. Get focused.
I can't think of a better way to end it right there. Jimmy, thank you so much for being with us.
Scott, it was awesome. Thank you for having me. Have a wonderful day.
Well, there you've got it, Success Chargers. Another episode is in the books. Hey, listen, be sure to stop by and visit Jimmy's website at jimmymonk.com. Find out what he's about. Stop by and visit the Reality Check podcast.com and see what Craig Price has got going on there. Remember to go by and download today's episode with me, Scott Cooksey. We're talking about connection. You'll be able to find that there and a great number of other awesome interviews to listen to. Hey, and by the way, do me a favor. If you enjoyed today's show, would you please share that with somebody? That's all I ask. Somebody when you're driving around, somebody you work with, somebody who likes to listen to something during the day, or if they're a fan of talk radio, they're probably going to like podcasts. And if you've heard something in this episode that you think is notable for you, helpful for you, please share that with somebody. That's all we ask. That's what we've got for this week, Success Chargers. We'll see you next week. Thanks. If you enjoyed what you just heard, please post your 5-star review and subscribe to Success Charger today. Your future is waiting.